Wees welkom, stel je vragen, stel zoveel mogelijk vragen. Wij hebben ook vragen, die gaan we aan Paul stellen. En in de tussentijd komen we ook gewoon bij jou terug om te kijken wat jouw vragen zijn. So, Paul, that was a mouthful. Starting, I introduced you today. I introduced Sister Benji and Don. Just to give people an idea of who they are dealing with or talking to. We are also live on Facebook, and we are, inviting everybody to drop their questions if they have questions. Of course, this conversation is about Seth P. Moore versus Zwarte Piet. And the first question is, who is Seth P. Moore?
Best way I can do it is to go back to the context of me arriving in the Netherlands, which is in the early 1990s. I came to do sessions for a brother named Chip Dullison, and he brought me over to the Belma, first of all. Chip was involved in the African-centered movement. He knew of Dr. Joseph Benji Cannon, and from that, and other activists from the United States, and I think from the UK as well. I had been in my, I suppose, early 30s at that point, and or mid 30s, and I was building my knowledge base. I actually got the contact through teaching in the prison, a high category prison in England. Two ladies were visiting from the Netherlands, and I was introduced to them one lunchtime. They heard me talking to the prison governor, the head of security, head of education, and I was talking about the importance of voodoo for the Black prisoners, to which they were going, and their heads were all over the place. And I just said, I said about Legba. I talked about the issue of Legba, decision-making, being at the crossroads in their life, making better decisions. I didn't really, I met the ladies from the Netherlands, didn't think anything about it, but it was about maybe 6 months later, I got a contact from Chip Dullison, and he asked me would I come over. And so I did. I came over about 3-4 times. And then on one of the occasions, somebody else asked me to come and give a talk at a film festival in Amsterdam. And it was at the end of November. And when I arrived at Schiphol, I was walking through Schiphol from my gate, and I saw all these pictures and whatever of Moors. So from the history I had, I could tell there were Moors by the turbans and the hoop earrings. They were kind of not what I would call they were quite light-hearted images. I was like walking through the terminal going like, what the, I was going like, what's going on here? And so anyway, I got through. I always remember in particular, there was they were in a, what we call a chemist. I'm not sure. I can't.
Apotheker in Dutch.
Apotheker, okay. So in the apotheker, I saw them there, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So anyway, I just went down. I think I did one presentation. Then I remember, I can't remember where the place was, but I was doing a session on the actual attack upon the African psyche through the word Obi. So my name Obin, my son who's here, his name's Obiaku. Obi means heart, wish, home and kindred, chief, lineage, soul, spirit, mind, and shrine house. So 1 3-letter word in Igbo language has all these different meanings and interpretations. So I remember doing the presentation. In the middle, I kind of went, hey, I said, why y'all got pictures of Moors up on around the place? Oh, Zwarte Piet is racist, Zwarte Piet. I said, but they're Moors. Yeah, it's racist. Yeah, Zwarte Piet is racist. I said, but you don't know about the Moors, what the Moors did in Europe and whatever. No, Zwarte Piet is, and I was like, oh, wow. But I could see this wave of kind of resistance is what at the time I'd already done some work with Molefi Asante, Dr. Molefi Asante, the originator of Afrocentricity, and he was talking about twin pillars of consciousness: consciousness towards your oppression, consciousness towards your victory. And so I kind of okay, and I moved on with my presentation, because as far as I was concerned, it showed a very damaged psychology, that people were seeing Moorish influences but not recognizing them for the power and position they actually represent. I jump back, I go forward to, if that was like 1994, 1995, you know, I had a break from attending things in the Netherlands. And then round about 2000, it would have been about maybe 2006, my ex-wife started to work in The Hague, Den Haag. And what happened was, I remember I was at home, I was in London, and she said, she tried me in the morning, that she go, Obi, she said, there's all these white folk blacked up jumping around in the streets doing this. And I said, I was like, Schwarty Pete. She said, Schwarty Pete, what the is Schwarty Pete? And so I told her about it, because I'd gone back and I'd done some research and whatever. There's a couple of places in like Cornwall and east of London, the Isle of Sheppey, that have kind of similar celebrations.
Really?
No, yeah. Nowhere near as big, but they're there still. And so I told her this thing. She's going like this. So when I came over and I saw these things, and I was like, okay. And then I picked up, I think it was a thing of protest that someone had picked up on this, and this started off with. So when I came over a couple of years ago, I was, and then it was like, oh, the passion of it all, and it's like, oh, it's racist, is that? But I was still asking, do you not understand that when they're showing that thing, for me, it triggers Moorish history, the contributions to Europe, etc., and that relationship. Mm-hmm. But for many other people, it's racism.
But did you know by then what triggered the racist and what triggered the emotion? But because
what you see, you see, because of being really into the psychohistory, very much into the psychohistory for the last 20 years, I always look about the impact upon the psyche of anything. Mm-hmm. So whether it's going to be positive, negative, or whatever, I look about, do we nurture? Does it nurture you, or is it attacking you and putting you down? So I know I heard you mention that I was a boxer, but I've been a martial arts instructor since I was 15 years old, which is what, 45, 46 years now, on and off. And I know that part of the discipline is always making sure when you do your blocking in traditional karate, you always cover all the parts that you do, the blocks you cover. It's all about covering the body. When you're punching, you're also supposed to be covering yourself. So I'm always interested in, if people are constantly back and defending themselves, they're never going to take action.
Exactly, and this is what you mean by the Zwarte Piet. The cover is actually saying it's racism. This is the
yes,
right?
Yes.
So when it's racist, we're like this, and we're not doing anything, just taking the hit.
That's right.
Okay.
But you know something. I have to be honest, in the time that I really started growing up as a kid, this whole part about the Moors is something that's been left out of the story, of the narrative. This is not anything that we're hearing about the Moors. You know what I mean? I mean, even today, when you are reading history books, they're not going to talk about the Moors. They're not going to talk about everything that they did in Europe. They're not talking about that.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because just the other day, I was talking about this with a guy, and I said, you know, look, the Moors were very important in, and this guy's supposed to be like a historian or something, and he's like, no, this is about Dutch families and Spanish families having black people as slaves, you know, but you're supposed to be a historian.
Oh, the guy's very stupid then. The guy's, you see, no, simply put, you got to always contextualize history.
Exactly.
And so he can be talking about, you see, what they show you with Zwarte Piet is called a Renaissance Moor.
Yeah, the Moorish.
Hence the flamboyant clothing. So by the European Renaissance, the Moors are no longer strong.
Of course not. Yeah.
So their knowledge had been taken. So then they choose to take a snapshot of history showing that point of history. Not when the Moors were in the Iberian Peninsula and had set up all the translation schools, that European scholars who were not under the Dark Age, because the Dark Ages were talking about the times where anything outside of Christianity was put down.
Yeah.
And so during that time, scholars from Europe who were expounding knowledge, not of Christianity, were called satanic. They were burned, they were hunted down, they had all of those things done to them. Even today, sometimes there's a whole argument to get into the people because they start talking about the Illuminati being evil. But they're actually taking a proto-Christianic line. So all of this time is a very fascinating time for me. You know, when I study this thing. But the psychological damage of being under threat all the time and pointing back and saying, oh, Zwarte Piet, racism, then you're asking the perpetrator not to be racist. Whereas for me, I'm not talking about Zwarte Piet per se. I really don't give a flip.
Something.
I don't give a flip. You carry on with that thing. That's all right with you. Then, so of course, then colorism comes in. Oh, well, brother, well, he's light-skinned, he's mixed race. It's different for him because it's so. I said, my ass was grown up in Blackburn, Lancashire, 1959 I was born. I went through the 1960s and 70s where I was the only person of color in the whole area, adopted into a white family. I was niggered up every day. Somebody was on my case every day for something. And so I don't, when people tell me formatively, you went through your things and formative, the blackest thing around.
Yeah.
And I was darker, of course. I was out in the sun more when I was younger. But what I'm saying to you is, I had to come out of the defensive shop. Exactly. Thankfully, I was put into martial arts because I was becoming a maniac. And I could have been in prison at least twice, even after the martial arts. But what I'm saying is that I had to understand the psychology, not only my psychology, of the psychology of the people who were perpetrating the stuff.
Exactly.
And this is the global phenomenon.
Exactly. I want to go for a small translation. I think that's a good idea. I don't know why, but I think it's a good idea.
Somebody's for translation?
A translation, translated into Dutch. For the people who don't speak English that well. Paul heeft, en misschien wil je me ook helpen. Paul heeft eigenlijk verteld hoe hij op het idee is gekomen. En dat had te maken met dat hij hier in Nederland was voor presentatie, toch, Benji?
Ja.
En op een gegeven moment zag hij, toen hij hier aankwam, een afbeelding van Zwarte Piet. En die liet hem denken aan de Mooren. Omdat hij geschiedkundige informatie, hij kon het in de context plaatsen. Right. En toen hij tijdens zijn presentatie vroeg van, hey, wat zijn al die afbeeldingen? Toen merkte hij dat mensen het hadden over Zwarte Piet. En hij merkte ook dat het
weerstand opriep.
Juist, weerstand opriep.
Het racisme.
Juist. En toen vertelde hij over Mollefai Asante, toch? Of heb ik nu de verkeerde naam?
Ja.
Toch? De Twin Pillar of Consciousness, die met de African centrism is begonnen. Dus de school, die knowledge daarvan. En die zegt eigenlijk, jij hebt twee onderdelen. De ene is consciousness towards oppression. Dus bewustzijn naar je onderdrukking. En consciousness towards victory. En dat is een bewustzijn van je kracht.
Ja,
en die twee dingen spelen heel erg. Omdat hij een bokser is geweest, wat hij vertelt.
Nee, geen bokser. Martial arts.
Martial arts, sorry, ja. Omdat hij een martial art is, een beoefenaar is geweest, jarenlang. Hij is dat gaan doen omdat hij als dubbelbloed, ik zeg altijd dubbelbloed, ook vaak onder attack is geweest. Hè? Van, hey, je bent zwart en hey, mensen... Hij heeft
terroriseren.
Ja, dus hij moest zich continu verweren. Maar dat continu verweren deed iets met hem, waardoor hij in die psychic is gegaan. Dus dus zich heel erg bezig heeft gehouden van, maar hoe werkt het brein? Weet je, want als je continu onder attack zit, dus continu jezelf verweert, wat gebeurt er daar? En ik denk dat is eigenlijk de wortel geweest van zijn Seth P. Moore verhaal. En misschien kan je me daarin ondersteunen. De rode draad van Seth P. Moore is niet dat hij niet zegt dat het racistisch is, maar hij zegt, waar is je weerstand? Want als je continu aan het verdedigen bent, als je continu die, dat op je af laat komen zonder dat je een verweer hebt, dan brengt dat schade aan je.
Zonder die filter. En daarbij, wat ik heel mooi vond wat Paul zei, is dat als jij dat gevecht aangaat over Zwarte Piet, dan vraag je eigenlijk aan de personen die racistisch zijn om daarmee te stoppen. That's not gonna happen.
Thank you. Yes.
En daarbij weten wij dat achtergrondverhaal niet.
Niet, juist.
We don't have
the context van de
context. We don't have the context. So we cannot put Seth P. Moore, we cannot put the Moors in the right position. Yes. So we are telling the Dutch people to translate the Moors for us into idiots, into fools, into buffoons, into people who only have like one property. Je bent de boekpiet, or you're the horse piet, or the cook piet. You cannot do anything else. You can only do one thing.
One thing. Okay, Paul. So actually, for who is Seth P. Moore? Because you are the one who you made this. This is your project. This is your.
What happened? If you remember, what I was when I first proposed this, I was saying that I know of certain people been writing about the Moors, and from like Jan Carew. One of the best things I saw was about Jan Carew, who Professor Carew wrote this dynamic about the Moors, the expulsion from the Moors in Spain in 1492. So I remember reading this maybe in the 1990s, and I was like, wow, I didn't know this information. And of course, he was linking it with ethnic cleansing, because they had this thing about the blue bloods, the Castilians, the blue bloods. One of the tests was that if you couldn't see the blue veins beneath your skin, you would be expelled. So this is part of the Spanish Inquisition. And so what happened was I was looking at all this information. Then there was the Stanley Lane Poole's book on the Moors, so that was being referenced. So I went to find that, and then there's the Golden Age of the Moors edited by Dr. Ivan van Sertima. Wayne Chandler. We brought over Wayne Chandler to the UK around about, I think it was 1992, and he did a presentation on the Moors as well. He was talking about the presence there, and then the fight by the Reconquista done by the Christians to retake the Iberian Peninsula. So I found this really interesting. I always remember a brother called Brandon Scott in Nottingham. He really liked the Moors. Personally, I had a reticence about them because I was saying, well, wait a minute, you gave this information over to the Europeans, who then hit the world with it. And this is a very important dynamic. So what happened was, originally when I came over 2 years ago, and I said, oh, I just realized, oh, Schweite Pete's going on again. I was like, okay. And then people were really this kind of passionate protest about it. And I said, okay. I said, but what are you doing about your view of it all? Because when I see it, I'm triggered by, the achievement. My consciousness goes towards the victory and the victorious thought. I got no time for the other thing. I understand it. Believe me, I understand. I can break down the history and development of race, racism, and whatever. However, I'm going to be looking about taking action and really making my consciousness grow me so that I feel confident, competent, etc. So whilst talking to you, if you remember, I said to you'll understand this, Sister Benji, about how so we call it lost in translation, don't we, sometimes? I said to I'll talk to Wayne Chandler, and then he'll come over and do sessions on it, So I talked with Brother Wayne, and then I said I would, 2 years ago, I said I would come and I would do some research and get experience of the Zwarte Piet, how it's represented and whatever, and the protests, and then I'll let Wayne do. Then the next year we'd go for it, and then I get a call about 14 days before. So, oh, Brother Paul, I booked the venues, and you're giving 6 talks, 3 in Rotterdam and 3 in Amsterdam. I'm going like, what when? And it was like, it's in 2 weeks. So I was saying, what?
And you love it. And you love it.
No, but what happened was, I explained it was that, but then when the challenge is given, I just said, okay. So I just went deep into the thing and had to organize the format. Another dimension was I've been living for over 3 years in Brazil. And whilst I was in Brazil, my knowledge of the Moors is really restricted to the Spanish scenario. And I remember it was the first time I went out on my own in Brasilia, where we're at. I went to because my ex-wife is of Oshun. So I was going to buy her sunflowers. And so when I went to buy the sunflowers, I was in this place, and of course I couldn't speak Portuguese. I was like standing there, and then there was went to the flower stall, and they didn't understand. And I'm trying to say, I'm talking green, I'm talking money, trying to talk it. But then what happened was, there was a guy, this tall Brasileiro with a beard and dark hair, and they call him over, and he speaks English, and his name was Hermes Machado. Hermes the messenger, Machado meaning machete.
Yeah.
He is a historian, training to be a school teacher, but wanting to go into Itamaraty, their foreign office. So I was like, So then I struck up a friendship with this guy. This is my first day out. Wow. And then he started telling me about the Portuguese history. And I was going like, wow, Portuguese ain't really a force now.
They were massive.
Wow.
Yeah, they were massive.
I was like,
I remember that I went to the Algarve with my mom, like when I was 16 years old or something. And we went into this enormous fort. These are things that you think about, when you all things fall into place, really. And we went into this fort, and they were explaining to us that it was the Moors who built it. And this was like what should it be? Probably in the 70s, late 70s. And, and I'm like, okay, so this is how old? Yeah, so 500 years old or something like that. I'm like, really? So it was really at the moment, but it didn't drop at the moment but it did make a really big impression on me.
So you see, what happens is we end up sometimes with knowledge knowledge from one point and knowledge from another point. So, for instance, when I was teaching in school, I knew about the slave triangle. Then I learned about the Olmec civilization in Mexico.
Right.
And there were two things like this, separate. Then what happened was, what linked them was the intercontinental currents lying between in the Atlantic Ocean, going from down from the Canary Current from Europe down to west after Senegambia, the equatorial countercurrent that allowed the Europeans to go into West Africa, and it sweeps all the way down to Angola, then sweeps up into Brazil and into the South Caribbean. And then you got the northern equatorial current coming back from the Americas back into Europe.
Europe, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't realize, I just didn't realize that these are all linked.
Yeah.
But then, and so I remember the day that I kind of went, and I asked my colleague, a guy called Dave Robertson, I said, Dave, I said, is the intercontinental current, is that the slave triangle? He said, yeah, of course. Go to the unity with nature. Go to nature first. What are the natural barriers or the natural phenomenon that's going on? So then I understood that. And so what I'm kind of driving at is that you're all in the Netherlands were introduced to Moorish history through this guy, and then so Schenkman, who wrote the original version, and then I had to go and study, well, how did this phenomenon come about? And it wasn't until 1945, because there's a lot of political and religious oppression of the Catholic faith.
Yeah.
And so what happened was only till 1940, 44, 45, when Canadian soldiers started dressing up and blacking up, that it became kind of popularized after that point. And it was linked to all the liberation movements of from the Nazis and whatever. And so then people started this, let's have some fun and cavort about and whatever. So of course, the Canadians were coming with their racism. So it would have been like fun for them. But then, so these stereotypes, these stereotypical images of the gollywog that we had from Florence K. Upton, her image, and then Enid Blyton and the gollywogs in the UK, that's what we had. You had the minstrel shows over in the States. You have these images all over. And so they just run onto that. Now the thing is, are you that image? Are you that stereotype? Are you that thing? And the answer is no.
No, not. But if I'm thinking about myself as a kid, I could have told you, like, if I'm walking from the one, I remember that every day when I was going to school, especially in this period, and I was always thinking, oh my gosh, why can't my mom just take me to school? Because I know walking from my house to my school, which is about maybe 15 minutes walk, it was on all the time, Zwarte Piet, Zwarte Piet, Zwarte Piet, Zwarte Piet. So I was thinking to myself, I said to myself, when my kids grown up, when I'm having kids, I'm not taking them to Zwarte Piet. I'm not taking them to Sinterklaas. I'm not taking them to none of these things.
You see, the thing is that you don't want the racism. You don't want that. And that has to be fought against. Yes. No doubt.
Yes, absolutely.
But it's like the Chinese get ridiculed. The Chinese used to have, it's like Malcolm X said, they used to have an expression, the Chinaman's luck. Until the Chinese got rid of, they had a cultural revolution, which was hardcore. They got rid of anything that was against them. And so they had these things. They went meticulously through. Remember, they had 17 million opium addicts because the British attacked them with opium.
Well, that's the whole thing that's happening right now in Hong Kong. And I was checking one of the elderly who's living in Hong Kong, and you got all these young people that demonstrating for democracy and this and that. And this guy's like, you know, you're fighting for democracy, but when the British were here, they had signs on the restaurants prohibited for dogs and Chinese.
Yes,
So,
yeah, but
you know what I mean?
this is where we have to go to the hardcore. So what goes on? Do I agree you should be protesting Zwarte Piet? Yes, you should. But at the same time, you have to do, so that's your defense mechanism. You got your defense up. Mm-hmm. So for instance, if you say anything against Jewish people, you're in trouble.
Yeah, you're done.
Because they've got the defense mechanism up, they've got it working for them, so that what happens, nearly all Jewish celebrations, all Jewish talk about when they were oppressed and when they got out of it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You understand me? Yeah. So it's that self-determination to get out, because it's your action. And what I'm saying is, when I said about ZP Moor, Zwarte Piet Moor, ZP Moor, right? I said teacher and philanthropist, because the Moors taught the Enlightenment to Europe. When the Europeans had their Enlightenment, they had their Renaissance, then they had their Enlightenment. The information that fueled it came from the Moors. Mm-hmm. That's why right across, you'll see these statues of Moors with usually golden hair, holding up lamps, holding light, representing enlightenment and knowledge. It's right there in front of your face.
Yes, please hold up. Hold up, 1 second. We're going back to this. We're going further into this. I want to do a small translation because you said a lot of very important things. Let's go back. The last thing you said was about, okay, let's recap. What you're actually saying is oké, ik moet het in het Nederlands zeggen natuurlijk. Eventjes voor de mensen die niet zo goed het kunnen volgen. In een nutshell zegt hij is niet tegen protesteren, want protesteren moet. En Sister Benji gaf een voorbeeld van hoe verschrikkelijk ze het vond dat ze naar school liep elke dag en dat de moeder niet met haar meeliep, omdat ze continu aangevallen werd door het woord Zwarte Piet. Dus natuurlijk moet je verdedigen, dus protesteren is nodig, maar je moet ook een manier hebben om jezelf eruit te krijgen. Ja. Dus je kan niet alleen verdedigen, je moet ook een strategie hebben. Ja. En hij gaf als voorbeeld Joodse mensen, die hebben hun geloofsfeesten. Nee? Oh, hij verdwijnt.
Alles wat je zegt, als jij nu wat zegt over Joden, kijk Thierry Baudet. He got his ass kicked.
Ja, dus eigenlijk, hij zegt, het is eigenlijk, en ook nog over Chinese mensen, die waren ook onder attack. En wat ze eigenlijk hebben gedaan, ze zorgen ervoor dat ze hun geschiedenis intact hebben, maar dat ze ook een strategie hebben. En dat is eigenlijk wat hij zegt. Dat moet goed begrepen worden. En hij zegt ook, kijk, hij noemt ZP Moor, de Z staat voor zwart en de P staat voor Piet, maar hij is een filantroop. En een docent, toch? Filantroop en een docent. Ja. Met andere woorden, de Mooren die hebben een kennisoverdracht gebracht die Europa
groot heeft gemaakt.
Dus als je die beelden ziet met die Mooren en het licht, dat zijn de brengers van het licht. En dit is waar we nu verder
waar we naartoe moeten.
Juist. Dus uiteindelijk komt het erop neer, leer de geschiedenis kennen, ga even mee in dit gesprek, luister wat hij te vertellen heeft, want dit is het stukje waarbij we het gaan omkeren. Paul, you were talking about the Enlightenment, you were getting into the history of the Moors.
You see the parts is what you call light or knowledge. Mm-hmm. The Enlightenment that the Europeans then claim, and it's all, you'll always see the Renaissance and the Enlightenment. The Renaissance begins around about after the so-called Dark Ages, goes to the Middle Ages. So the Dark Ages end, it goes to the Middle Ages, then part of the Middle Ages becomes a Renaissance, then that turns to the Enlightenment. Now, what they don't say is that one of the key points that you'll see, even there's a show in the UK called Horrible Histories, and it's supposed to be a children's show. I must be a child. I watched 3 episodes today. But they were talking, even in that, they were talking about the Italian Renaissance, how the Italians were going to Arabic schools.
Oh,
and the Arabic universities. And so you had that route, and then also you had the Spanish route. And so it was the siege of Toledo, when in Toledo, Spain in 1085, it's after that point that you end up with the Dark Ages ending and the Middle Ages beginning. And we're talking about the flow of knowledge and consciousness. Now, people just don't get this because Europe seems to think, it seems that they will teach that all of a sudden they just got these inventions from somewhere, anywhere, or whatever. And then what we do know is that they had to construct a romantic view. If you ever look at the word romantic, it says Roman, tick. I always say TikTok as in romantic time, right? So a romantic, if you look in an etymological dictionary, the deeper ones, it'll tell you that one of the interpretations of romantic is a creator of false histories, a fantastic liar. So for instance, you know, when you might ask yourself, oh, you want your partner to be more romantic, you probably find he was. When he said he was working late, yeah. So anyway, that's it. You got to be careful with that one. But what they did is that they reconstructed a line of history going only back to Greece, which is a damn nonsense. So they say that knowledge only came from the point like civilization. They show the Acropolis. The Acropolis compared to Kemet, to the African continuum is nada, nothing. We see what happens is there's been a history taught to everybody. Now let's see this. It isn't all white people teach that history. Most white people, the vast majority of white people, have been taught that this is the Virgin. White people don't know, they just don't know. They don't know any other version. So when you drop it in context, they're going like, huh? What? I say, yeah, they're giving us this little bit of history, then we got all of this. And so this is one of the things that I try to get across to people. Exactly. That we function with the information we've been conditioned with.
Right. But you know something, Paul? I was just thinking, when you're talking about the romantic, I was thinking about the whole story, because of course, Rome is the 2 brothers, Romulus and Remus.
Yeah, the sons of a bitch.
And they the sons of the wolf, right?
The female wolf.
Right, the sons of the bitch.
Dog. He's a bitch. Yeah. That's what you call it.
Sons of bitches. So this is also a construct, you know, like, okay, Rome was started in 752, and, you know, these 2 boys were fed by a wolf and blah, blah, blah. You know, it's a construct as well. So if you're talking, you know, this is something that it's going to stay in my brain, romantic. I'm not going to forget it. Thank you very much.
No, but you see, this is the all of a sudden, you see what happens is, you got to think called, you got history, then you got to think called myth. The myth contains timeless truths, which make sense when it's time to know. So what goes on, we used to have proverbs and parables. There's a old friend called Joe Ray in Manchester. He used to say that every time if his mom gave him a beating, a discipline, she turned into the original rapper. You know that, don't you? That is black women invented rap. You know that, don't you? You don't know that one?
No.
When the discipline in the church, don't you do that to I get. So they beat you. They give you a beating in time and speak inside rhythm and poetry, you see. So it was the original rappers. Yeah. Anyway, so she said that she always used to give, first before she started, she'd give a parable. And one I was like, Joe, thief don't like to see thief with long bag. So a thief don't like to see another thief with a long bag. saying that they have a greater capability of stealing. Right?
Wow.
So what happens? The proverb, positive action, or a parable, like Jesus used to teach. When they asked Jesus, the disciples, why do you teach these? He said, because some people aren't ready. And so he gives a symbolic story. Which explains this thing. Right? Now, what goes on? The myths that are told, we got myths from Kemet. We got myths from all different cultures, have all got different myths and ideas. But then somehow we're meant to use European myths as fact. As fact, not that. And so if we challenge that, it's a case of, oh, yes, you're trying to be troublesome. No. Challenge them all. Challenge everything is what I say. So, for instance, I said to someone, I was doing an online session the other week, and we talk about myth, and someone made a comment about, oh, myth is this, and I said, yeah, why is it that the Queen of England, every time she goes to the House of Lords, which is the only part of the building, she's allowed in, she can't go in the House of Commons because that's the Knights of War. So every time she comes in the robing room, she's surrounded by the myth of King Arthur and all the qualities like righteousness, justice, all these other things that the myth contains is on the wall surrounding the Queen. So you see, if you ask most British people about that, they won't know. They'll be clueless of it. And yet they may know the story of King Arthur, but they don't know the significance of that and the Knights of the Round Table, even to the point where one of the kings, it might have been Henry II, he wanted to set his own order up. He wasn't allowed to use the myth of King Arthur because he was a warmonger. So he had to do what are they called now? The Garter. Knights of the Garter. Thank you. So he had to invent his own thing at Windsor, based at Windsor, and then that's the name Windsor that the Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, the German rulers of England, changed their name to Windsor after the First World War. So you see, they're using these myths, these ideas, and applying them today. But then we don't get given.
We are copying them, and we got our own. We have our own, and it's also, and this is one of the things that I think, because I mean, all this protesting, it's not about saying things. I mean, I had to take my son out of school because I was showing these teachers that my kids is not coming to school when you guys are celebrating this. You're celebrating this for almost a month, day in, day out. You are confronting these children with Swatapit, in the books, in the school books, in the class.
Check this. Check it. Remember in the USA, my son said to me yesterday, he said, look at this. He said, Thanksgiving. He said, yeah, Thanksgiving is bad news for turkeys and for the Native Americans.
And for the Native Americans, of course.
Well, they're giving Thanksgiving for the fact that they got this land.
Yeah.
What are the Thanksgiving for Zwarte Piet? He's got a Turkish saint, and a Moorish servant bringing gifts. Enough said. That's the Muslims. That's Islamic culture.
Right.
What came from Turkey? Y'all got tulips. Y'all got tulips from Turkey.
Right.
Then what else did you get? You got all of the stuff, your whole infrastructure. I'm not going to carry on too much about it because that's what I want you to come and learn at the actual event. But why should you be thinking, oh yes, Zwarte Piet, it's all about black. Is that all you are? The color of your skin? That's all you are? Is that what they've reduced you to? Like the same way in Native America, the Native Americans, they call a Native American woman a squaw, which is one of their terms for vagina. Is that all she is? So all the time, you've got this reductionist attitude, and then all we can do is protest about. I'm not bothered about that. It's like watching a boxer He's a master of defense. He's a master. Does he actually hit anybody? Oh no, he don't hit anybody. He just parries and covers up like this all the time. I said, so how does he score points to win? Oh no, we're not bothered with that. I'm saying, yeah, do the protest, but find out your African history. Find out the significance of the Moors, good and bad. Good and bad. Realize why the European scholarship covers up the fact the Moors and the Turks used to slave them. And they don't want to teach you that element. They don't want to turn around and say, yeah, we were getting turned over by these Turks and Moors. They're the ones who actually have the power. And they were slaving us from the 1300s to the 1700s as Barbary pirates. In fact, one Dutchman actually joined them.
Yeah.
The so-called Corsairs.
Simon something. Simon.
So you see what you've got is there wants a story to be told where Europe and Europeans are always in power. And they have to stretch that back in history by giving a romantic view of history and stretching it back and said that the ancient Greeks were the originators of civilization, which is a nonsense. You can go Chinese, you can go Asian, you can go American, Native American. Well, you can go to all across the place.
You know what it is? It's like I'm really, even right now, listening to them trying to say, oh yeah, that's the beginning of democracy. When you're looking at this democracy that was in Greece, I mean,
based on slavery.
Based on slavery and based on misogyny, and I mean, I'm really dumbfounded at them sometimes. I'm just looking at like, really?
Zullen we even vertalen weer, Benji? Go and translate, see what I remember. Kijk of je me kan bijstaan bij dit stukje. Eigenlijk zijn we een stukje de geschiedenis ingegaan en zegt hij, de Europese scholarship, zegt hij, en dat wil zeggen de Europese geschiedenis, laat het zo noemen, die gaat niet verder terug naar Rome. En eigenlijk moet je...
Griekenland.
Toch? Naar Rome-Grieken. Toch? Ja. Rome-Grieken. Ja. En ze zeggen eigenlijk, de Europese scholarship, die zegt eigenlijk dat Grieken het begin van de mensheid is geweest. Het begin van de
cultuur, van de Europese cultuur.
Van de cultuur, niet de mensheid, dat zeggen ze niet, maar wel van de civilization.
Right, beschaving.
Van de beschaving. En dat is absolute nonsens, eigen woorden van Paulo Bina. Absolute nonsens, want de geschiedenis gaat veel verder terug. Hij zegt, kijk naar de Chinezen, naar de Indiazen, naar de Indiazen en Chinezen. En hij noemde volgens mij nog iets.
Ja, de Olmecs.
Olmecs. Dus het gaat veel verder terug. En de lineage timeline die laat dat ook zien. Hè? Dat is ook het werk van Paulo Bina. Maar wat zegt hij nog meer? Hij zegt, hij wil niet te veel of te diep ingaan op de geschiedenis. Want daar zijn die webinars voor. Maar wat hij zegt, wat hij wel wil delen, is dat je niet moet vergeten dat je te maken hebt met mythes. Het zijn allemaal mythes en het zijn geen waarheden. En dat we ze ook moeten zien als mythes. Dus leer je geschiedenis en dan herken je de mythes.
Ja, en je moet natuurlijk ook kijken van, er zit natuurlijk aan geschiedenis, zit natuurlijk goede en slechte kanten. Weet je, maar dat maakt niet uit. Want het gaat erom dat je naar die geschiedenis kijkt als het is, puur. In plaats van het steeds maar aanpassen aan jouw werkelijkheid. Weet je, dat is wat er gebeurt met de wetenschappen. Want men wil eigenlijk niet toegeven dat de kennis van zwarte mensen kwam. Uit Kemet. En dan weer dat die kennis van Kemet via de Mooren weer Europa binnen is gekomen. Want die kennis van die Grieken en die Romeinen, die kwam ook uit Kemet.
Juist. Nou, daar hebben we natuurlijk ook een aantal live sessies over gedaan.
Ja.
Yes, naar die live sessies kijken over de Mooren en jezelf daarin verdiepen, krijg je meer informatie. Paul, I want to ask you a question about when we were doing a presentation when you were in Holland. You did a presentation, I think it was last year, and you ask everybody, when did you become black? Everybody who attended the presentation. Why did you do that?
Because if you think about it, awareness of race, if you're just if you're living in a black culture, you'll just be a person.
Yes.
You're just a person. You're just another person. In fact, I was sent something from a guy called Daniel Sobel, who I go on LinkedIn, and Daniel's an educator from London, and he sent me this. It was a joke about as a Romanian guy who he said when he was in Romania, he was just a guy. Then he came over to England, and he became Polish, and then he became these other. I think he said he went to Newcastle in the north. He became Polish because it was the ignorance he was met with that made him realize he was different. And what you usually find is that children will play together from very, very young. They'll play together and they'll just be whoever, that's it. But then what happens is at some point, you're going to realize if you're living in a white society, you're going to find out that you're not white.
You're different.
And so it can be, I was talking with my son today. I was asking, he's in a school here, and I just said, have you experienced any, anything racist? So when I always remember he was in school in Brazil. So he was because it was a private school, there were only, that's because his mom works for the government. She is a diplomat. So in that private school, there's maybe three of them who were in Sao Paulo, three of them in this school who were black, who were of African descent. And he got told he was told he was brown like a monkey's brother. And then he was told to go back to Africa. So, and go back to where you belong or whatever, this kind of stuff. But then at the time in the news, there were guys from West Africa who were dealing drugs outside of the allocated district within, what's it called? Druglangia, I think Druglangia, they call it something like that. They called it, that was the drugs area. That was where they allowed all the crackheads and the heroin addicts to go. So these guys started selling outside, and so it was all in the press. So then one of the children must have heard it, said this to him. My response to him was, I remember we were standing in a Starbucks queue in the shopping mall, and I said, what's the name of the child? And he told me, and I said, that's an Italian name. Tell him from me, he's only been here since 1886. You've been here for 400 years. So tell him to shut his mouth and go back to where he's from.
Right.
You understand me? Because he calls Sao Paulo the city of immigrants.
Yeah.
And there's a very strong Italian presence there. Then the other one, brown like a monkey's brother. I said, how do Brazilian women refer to you? Obiaku. What's the Portuguese for handsome again? What do they call it? Lindo. So they call it lindo.
Lindo.
Yeah.
Lindo.
So they always call him lindo.
Yeah.
So I turned around to him. I said, well, that must mean that Brazilian women like monkeys. So he's like, and he's like, huh? I said, what do they call you? He said, lindo. I said, so what going on? So you see what goes on. You've got people who don't look like you making judgments on you. So for instance, most jeans, most trousers are made to fit European women who may not have bumpers. We call Miss 6 o'clock. So it can be anybody who's got that figure. So it means, I mean, when I was boxing, believe it or not, when I was beautiful when I was 175 pounds. When I was 12, when I used to box, I was beautiful. 80 kilos, I was beautiful. Narrow waist, broad shoulders, all of this. My trousers, I had to get trousers to fit my thighs and my butt. That's meant to have this big gathering on the belt around my waist. Oh, I remember it. It was lovely. But
So
what happened is that the fashion was not being geared towards someone with your physiognomy.
Of course not.
So when you're judging yourself from other people's points of view, the warning was given in Christianity, wasn't it? Worship the Lord your God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. Self-love and self-orientation, self-determination is the key.
Of course.
So when you're starting to complain about being called something, when white folk, why do you think Dutch people black themselves up?
That's fast.
Sorry, the reason they're doing it, they know where they got their knowledge from. They know subconsciously where they got it from. That's why every year they give thanks to a Turkish guy and to a Moor bearing gifts. That's why they do it every year. They know. The person who don't know is your black folk, who all you got is your color and you're protesting about that thing. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. They imitated the Moorish achievements from Spain. They imitated it and built their infrastructure. So that's why I say walk with confidence and knowledge of your true knowledge of yourself. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You got everything to gain when you start to know yourself. Exactly. So when I am saying to you, think about this. When your child sees Swati Pete, they should trigger Moorish knowledge. They should trigger when they look on that fool jumping up and down and drunk and cavorting. I say, let them do it. Me personally, I'm going, let them do it. If they get racist about it outside of that image, if they start cussing you down and whatever, take them out. Sorry, I say, take them out. Take out that thing. Stop it. Screen it out. But what I'm saying is this: when they show you that image, you should just be recalling your achievements and contributions to humanity.
Yeah, basically because what we used to do in our organization is that we used to organize children's parties. We had been doing that for a few times. And what we did is that we asked the children to come over and to dress up in their traditional clothes, and gifts. Of course, we would give them gifts, because they get gifts during this, Sinterklaas. But what I really want to do is to make sure that this whole defense system, this defense mode, the remembrance, are really looking for a form to
could you, Benji, I'm sorry to cut you, but children. Could you imagine the day comes when you do a carnival float and you're all dressed respectfully as Moors and you're carrying windmills, you're showing dams, you're showing clocks, you're showing all those things that were contributed by the Moors to Europe. Imagine you're dressed respectfully as Moors. These folk, they'll be going like, black folk as Moors? What's this? They'll be going like, you mean that when we're dressing up and cavorting, they're feeling good from it? They'll stop it overnight.
But that's exactly what I want to do.
They'll stop it overnight. But then watch this. By the time you finish doing that, and you are dressing as Moors and you understand it, right? You won't care what they do because you'll see them for what they are. Fools.
A question. Is this why you asked to go back to the childhood?
Yes.
So you can go back and know this is the same analogy or something? Is this why you asked?
No, watch this. The day you became black is usually associated with the day you went through your first trauma.
Yes.
And then and usually I'm yet to meet anybody who came up and said, yeah, the day I became black and aware that I was black was because I was raised in my house. My parents were around there and they taught about the glory of whatever. Now, I'm hoping that's what this rap boy of mine will be able to do, right? Mm-hmm. Because knowledge of self was what this is about, knowledge of consciousness. So he was immersed in that. Whereas his mother went through trauma. I definitely went through trauma. And the one thing I've got to say is it built my character.
Of course. Of course.
And then I found out later I'm a child of Ogun. I was meant to have that. I was meant to have that role as both a warrior and a transformer. So I realized it's part of my life's work, what I'm here to do.
Yes.
For other people, they're not on that level. They're not on that position. They're not in that thing. And a lot of them are walking around with a state of trauma. They're traumatized. They're hurt. They have these deep feelings that are set in there, and then they trigger out occasionally in the choices they make, the beliefs that they have. Where do I belong or whatever? So, okay, Benji, you remember the day we met up in Amsterdam? I reminded I of this the other day. And I says, oh, I want some cappuccino. And he says, oh, Albert Haynes over there. I said, no, I want to go in this place here. That big place by the
stock market.
Yeah. And I said, no, I want to go in here. And they said, what? They got cappuccino here. Well, I don't want to go in Albert Haynes. And I'm still giving it to a white guy here or a white guy there. I sooner go to the white guy, let me go in here and get some service. And I actually remember going in and seeing I could tell the waiters weren't used to having Negroes come in there.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, I'm afraid, maybe I got some extra phlegm or spittle, whatever you're going to talk. Maybe got that. But then, something, it's, if they want to do that kind of stuff, it's up to them. It might have been there in the form of the cappuccino.
But my question was to go back to the Seppi Moor. Why you asked when did you become black has everything to do to go back to the trauma, and then you can get out of it or something.
Of course, you get out of it. You only get these are all things layered in. The late Dr. Patricia Newton back in 2004. We did a conference down in Bristol, put on by Sister Jendai Serwa and the brothers and sisters down in Bristol. And I remember on the poster, I was sent a poster by a good sister, Vinette Alvaranga, sent me the poster about 3 weeks ago. And what did we have on the poster? Consciousness towards oppression, consciousness towards victory. And then she started, Dr. Pat Newton, she's late now, God rest her soul, but she's an ancestor on that side we can tap into. She was talking about the oh God, I keep forgetting every single time I forget the red. It's part of the brain. It's part of the brain.
And perhaps we can start.
No, what it's an important thing because what happens is that she said that this is a part of the brain that gets layered by the experiences that we have. In actual fact, just before I did a session the other day, I had to follow up Tony Browder, and I was going, "What's that thing, Sister Pat was about again?"
Is it about the amygdala that you have the original?
That's
brain?
That's it.
Yeah, and then you got like the more developed brain, which is like you said, it's formed in different experience that you have. But then
that's it. Layers on, like layers of scar tissue experience, whatever. Well, that's why I do the thing, the life cycle is to actually go back and start looking at those layers and where there's been damage, right? So you're in Amsterdam, Rotterdam. What does a dam do? It stops the flow. It stops the natural flow and then gets it in. So I'm saying our flow of self-love has been stopped by the dam makers who then let the trickle come through at their convenience. And we've got to get back into our natural flow.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Gonna translate. I saw that there was only one question, but hey, I think everybody's really, what's going on there, Paul?
I'm still looking for the red. I keep saying the red, but it's not. It's the red set. I'll get it. It'll come when I don't think.
Yeah. In the meanwhile, we can do a little
You
translation.
think about that, then we're gonna translate.
Juist, juist.
Okay.
Waar we het over gehad hebben, ik heb hem de vraag gesteld van toen hij hier kwam. Hij is hier een paar keer geweest, hè, Paulina, voor presentaties. En een van de vragen die hij stelde is: wanneer werd je zwart? En heel veel mensen gingen inderdaad terug naar de tijd. En waarom hij dat dus eigenlijk deed, is dat je dan teruggaat naar het trauma van het zwart zijn. Waardoor je laag bij laag bij laag kan gaan helen. Toch? Als ik het
Ja, ook omdat je natuurlijk, als jij in je gezin bent, of je woont bijvoorbeeld ergens waar je omringd bent door zwarte mensen, dan ben je gewoon een persoon. Je bent niet bewust van je kleur, omdat iedereen dezelfde kleur is als jij. Weet je, of weet je, ik bedoel, ook al zou het Suriname zijn, dan ben je nog, dan zou je het misschien nog wel hebben, omdat je natuurlijk ook te maken hebt met die koloniale mindset. Weet je, maar in principe, als jij binnen je gezin bent, dan ben je een persoon. Maar als je dus binnen een society komt, zoals bijvoorbeeld hier in Nederland, dan ben je dus die ander. Dan ben je dus die zwarte persoon. En het maakt niet of je donkerwit bent of dat je echt zwart bent. Je bent die buitenlander, je bent die, weet je, de niet-Nederlander, de allochtoon, whatever. Weet je wel. Dus maar dat heeft dus te maken inderdaad met vooral bij kinderen dat je natuurlijk op een traumatische manier geconfronteerd wordt met je kleur. Terwijl, wat Paul zegt, dat we eigenlijk ook die prachtige kant kunnen zien van...
En mee kunnen geven aan onze kinderen.
Weet je? En dat moeten we doorgeven, inderdaad.
Voorbereiden, toch? Want dat heeft hij ook met de kinderen. Wat hij ook, de red nucleus, thank you. Red nucleus heet het. Dat is waar hij het over heeft. En dat is dat gedeelte van je brein die, zeg maar, littekens krijgt. Waar
daar gaan we het zo over hebben.
Daar gaan we het zo over hebben.
Uitleggen.
We gaan het eerst even hebben over het icoon. En dan komen we vast terug bij de red nucleus. Maar wat ik nog wilde zeggen is... hij had het ook over, stel je voor dat we allemaal gekleed zouden gaan als Mooren. Maar de Mooren, de respectvolle Mooren. Dus niet de Mooren die, zeg maar, de renaissance Moor, zoals hij dat zegt. Dus toen de Mooren al geslagen waren. Maar toen de Mooren in de kracht waren. We zouden door de straat op gaan met de molens en de dammen. En eigenlijk alle gifts, hè.
Alle kennis die zij overgenomen hebben. Ja.
Dat zou een behoorlijk verschil maken. Want als mensen dat
zou heel mooi zijn.
Een bepaalde evenwicht weer brengen.
Ja, want hij zei ook, wat ik ook heel mooi vond, hij zei van, als je dan even goed nadenkt, dan is die Sinterklaas een Turkse man met een moslim Moor. Tenminste, alle twee zijn het moslims. Denk daar eens even over na. Al die islamofoben die de moslims haten. Think about that. En je hebt het ook niet over het feit dat vanaf 1300 tot en met 1800 dat de Mooren dus vanaf die zogenaamde Barbarijse kust. Wat ik ook wel een hele bijzondere naam vind, hè? Barbarijse kust. Hè? Dus Noord-Afrika. Dat ze dus door hun werden ook tot slaaf werden gemaakt. Weet je?
Ja, dat vertelde hij ook inderdaad.
Ja, dat is ook
inderdaad dat de geschiedenis of de kennis wordt onderdrukt. En dat gaat voornamelijk over dat stukje dat de Turken en de Mooren eigenlijk de Europeanen tot slaaf hebben gemaakt. En dat is ook een hele belangrijke reden om de geschiedenis niet te willen vertellen. Goed, Paul, I want to ask you about the icon. You were talking about, before I do that, iedereen die kijkt op dit moment, die live is, of die misschien voorbij ziet komen, als je een vraag hebt, kun je het gewoon stellen. Er is een vraag gesteld over Black Friday, maar dat is helaas niet het topic voor vandaag, dus die gaan we parkeren. Die gaan we dan een andere keer behandelen. Of reageren, we kunnen er misschien een stukje over posten op onze Facebookpagina. Maar vandaag gaat het echt over de Mooren. En Black Friday is een hele andere topic. Dus die gaan we even parkeren. Paul heeft hier iets genoemd.
Die red nucleus.
Yeah, we can talk about it. The red nucleus. Imagine the Black Dutch dressed respectfully and resplendently as more surrounded by the contribution they gave from Spain and the flow of ancient knowledge. Already said that. Yeah, I translated that because you said that we were walking down the streets with a Moorish outfit, what that would do for our um, and for our knowledge of self and also what we would represent and give back into the community. Want to talk about the IT?
And it's the fact that, like I said, teacher and philanthropist, meaning you got to remember that think about the image of the Dutch who were there in that land, in the marshland, in the peat bogs, turf cutters. Remember, it's only by the irrigation methods, the damming methods, that raised that the land of the Netherlands became habitable and be able to. And it's from that Moorish gift. I remember when I was doing the research, I included a letter who this guy was saying, there's a white guy who was writing about the Moorish contributions, and he said yo, the Romans did irrigation in Spain. I said, well, the Romans, number one, the Romans got the idea of irrigation, etc., from the same source, which is from the River Nile or the Harpy. And then secondly, this guy, he just said the Moors rose it to a much higher level. Exactly. Much higher level.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you got these things, you know, anybody thinks that windmills originated in Holland needs to wake up and, you know, realize that there's a root to that as well. Yeah. There is all of these things, and this is what I'm trying to say. I get exasperated. I understand why, but I get exasperated that we'll protest, but we won't do the longer work of learning, or healing and learning, expanding the consciousness and understanding what's going on, but actually learning that, yeah, you've got this vast history, and then teach that to your children. Teach knowledge of self to your children. Yes, go protest, right? But then make sure you know your stuff. So let's reverse it now. The protest might be the fighting out here, but then your knowledge of self is your best defense. And that means you don't even get into things with people. Once you got that knowledge of self, you just turn around and say, yeah, you want to dress like, yeah, oh, why are you following? Oh, Schwarze Pete, yeah, you want to be like us. That's because you are like us, because you borrowed from us. This is how you became. Did I mention Blanco Pete? Did I mention Blanco Pete?
Wait for Blanco Pete. We're going to mention Blanco Pete in a while.
Okay.
In a while. I want to close with Blanco Pete. Dr. Chantella sent us a message. She said, great show, Paul and Sis Benji. Sometimes the only way for Black people to develop their racial identity is to be the only Black person in a space and having to decipher whether they are a part of a stereotype or their true selves. Thank you, Dr. Chantella, for watching and for your comment.
Why it's so important? Why it's so important? You see, race is a European construct. Race is a European construct. It was not considered the same way throughout history. And unless you understand the historical developments of race theory, a really good book to read on that is by a European writer, a white writer called Peter Fryer, did a book called Staying Power. And he shows in that book the difficulty that, for instance, the Spanish had, because he said in there that not only these people were a different color to them and had dominated them, they're also more civilized and more superior to them. Yeah. And so you have this kind of idea that, for instance, when the Moors were kicked out from Spain, one of the Ferdinand and Isabella were quite the king and queen of Spain. They say they were relatively good-natured about, allow more the Moors who were people remaining, to practice their own religion, just the same way the Moors had allowed Christians to practice their religion. But they did tax them more. But then what they said was the Christian church, the Catholic Church, turned around and said that they had to, they could no longer bathe, that the Moors had to smell like Christians, as in the great unwashed.
Yes.
Yeah. These are some of the things you have to. So cleanliness next to godliness.
No. Serious thing.
Yeah.
Because you know that the Moors, for instance, in I think in Seville or either Cordoba, they had so much bathhouses where they would go and wash. Yeah. And one of the first things the Spanish did was that they just knock all of them down. And I think actually I've been thinking about this whole psychological effect that this Moorish domination had on the Spanish, because we're talking religion now, right? And you have to realize that when this is 1492, when the Moors went out of Spain. 1517, Luther was trying to reform the Catholic faith, and it ended up that it tore it apart, right? And so Philip, who's actually their grandchild, they were totally not okay with people having a different faith. Everybody in the realm had to be the same faith. You had to be a Catholic. Okay? So when these Dutch came up and said, something, we want to be Protestant, they actually destroyed all the likeness, all the statues and all the paintings. They destroyed it in the Catholic churches here in the Netherlands and in Belgium, okay? And this is something that was a great insult to the Spanish king, because they all wanted everybody to be Catholic. So that's also a psychological thing right there.
If you go to, we used to stay in a place called Arcos de la Frontera. So if you go to Spain now, right from, you go down from Seville to Cadiz, Jerez, where my favorite sherry was made or is made, or the old subtitled De la Frontera. And De la Frontera is the old frontier with the Moors.
Yeah.
So in Arcos itself, there are two cathedrals at the top of the hill, and both of them were mosques.
Yeah, of course.
So when I was there, it really funny because I was there with my family, and then we were getting this kind of like not as much in Arcos, but if we went down into Jerez, you walk up, you still saw there was a very kind of resentment for anybody of color.
Yeah.
But then that's the vibe I was picking up. But why I started laughing is in all the supermarkets, they hung up ham hocks like you would do garlic for a vampire. It was like the ham hock. You might imagine you're a Muslim walking into this place. And then imagine you go into a mosque where you don't have any images, but then you walk in and then all of a sudden you've got images. You've got the, what do they call, the relics, hands and this and that of this saint and that saint or whatever. All which will be abhorrent to a Muslim. They've gone over the top with it.
Yes, they did.
The irony is that Protestantism goes more in line with Islam than the Catholic faith.
Of course.
And I was actually taught a simple thing, which was you could tell because in England, they had to combine the two because they were killing each other so viciously, the Catholics and the Protestants, that Henry VIII formed the Church of England.
Yeah.
And so then that aligned with the Protestant faith because he's at war with, he didn't like Spain.
Yeah.
And because he married Catherine of Aragon, and then divorced her, went to Anne Boleyn of France, which at that stage was Protestant. So what you had was this dynamic. So because to resign it all, they formed what's called the Anglican Church, which they call the High Church of England. Then you have the Low Church of England. So you have the Catholics and the Anglican Church, and then the Low Church of England. And how you can tell them is that when you go into the High Church or the Catholic Church, you'll see a crucifix with Jesus on it. But in the Low Church,
there's no
crucifix.
Jesus. Ah.
Jesus staying on it.
Okay, but let me ask you something.
I have to go back to Seppi Moor. We have to go back to Seppi Moor.
You know, it's true, but this is really a lot of the psychology that's happening, and that we don't know about. You know, and that is because what Paul said. The Protestants, they actually used a lot of the information that they got from the Moors. Remember, we was talking about this. Thomas of Aquino. You got what's this guy's name? Francis Bacon in England. You know, a lot of the people was this scholastic organized, the scholastic. They call it scholasticism or something, which was a whole idea that came out of the knowledge of the Moors, who said, no, listen, this old stuff that we're getting from the Greeks and whatever, we need to go back to the source. And this is what, for instance, Erasmus, who's this Dutch guy, what Erasmus did, this is what Luther, who was one of the Protestants, is what he did, because they say, listen, no, we're not going to listen to what the Pope is talking about. We want to go back to the source where, for instance, the Bible came from. We're going to go look at the Greek and the other Roman source, the original that we have, and then we're going to translate. And then we're going to form our faith. This is what we're going to do. And then they found out that a lot of things that was happening at that time, like, for instance, I give you a piece of paper, you give me money, and you can go to heaven. It's not in the Bible. All these things about the saints, it's not in the Bible.
So you see, what happened is the flow of ancient knowledge that went in its, if you will, its purest root came into Spain.
Yeah.
In studying Z.P. Moore, you got to remember that what is brought across into Spain and the scholarship that went in there all came out of Cordoba, the Moorish translation schools, and then it's moved across into Europe by scholarship, which is being persecuted. But then later, they start, it's like, oh yeah, we want to know this stuff now.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is that Z.P. Moore is supposed to be the idea that you understand your role, as in Black people's role, in doing this thing. You have no, every time you can look around. I was talking to some children the other day in a school for Black History Month in the UK in October, beginning of October, 5th of October. And I was with these little children, like 4, 5, 6. Yeah, they allow me to teach little children. That's how what of good character I am. And I said to these children, I told them about the African colors, the red, green, gold, and black. And I said, so where will you see the red, green, gold, and black? And they were saying, oh, in nature, and oh, in this, and they're guessing all of these things. And I said, no, go home. You see it in the traffic lights. And they were like, oh. I said, every time I see a traffic light, I'm remembering a Black achievement of a guy called Garrett A. Morgan. But going back into nature, it's a reminder for me to do what the ancients were saying. The first of the 5 principles of unification, unity with nature, is the first of the 5 tenets of the ancient African education system. So I'm looking at, that's when I look at a traffic signal. It's a reminder every day. So when they come through and give you a massive reminder every year of Shwati P, which you look at and translate into ZP Moor immediately and start looking, we raised this land out of the marshes. We brought it out of here. This is the knowledge that we came over and benefited the Europe. So when they go into the great golden age of the Dutch and all of this business and whatever, and I've got to say this, I've got to say it every time, you stole our flagship, you bastards. I never forgive you for that.
Man.
Stole our flagship. I don't want to hear any arguments about we came and did a raid in Northern Holland the year before. That's circumstantial. I conveniently forget about that. You stole our flagship.
Yeah, they broke it to pieces.
We had a bad enough time.
It's
we
in
had
the
Great
museum.
Plague, 1665. We had the Great Fire, 1666. And then you Dutch came down and stole our flagship. And
did you know what Samuel Pepys wrote? He said, oh my God, it looks like the devil is shit in Dutch. That's what he said. Samuel Pepys. Samuel Pepys.
He did a diary about that.
Yeah, he wrote in a diary. And I said, oh my God, looks like the devil is shit in Dutch.
Yeah. So all of these dynamics, these are histories. It's what we choose to remember.
We need to.
It's how you trigger it.
Again?
Yes.
What do you say again? We need to work it like Ogun. Explain.
That's right. Transform. You transform the image. So, for instance, I was once in a meeting with some black Palestinians, and they're in the state of Israel. I'm there talking with them, and they came in. I was wearing a 6-point star, Morgan David. I was wearing a 6-point star, and what happened was they were listening to me, and then going, yeah. They're going. They're looking, listening to what I'm saying, then looking at my chest and go, So we're in there 2 hours. At the end of the meeting, they got up and ran across straight to me. And I knew what they were going to say. Why are you wearing that? And I said, well, because it's about the unification of spirit, mind, and body. And they said, but it's the state of Israel. And I said, no, they used it like Hitler used the swastika. The swastika is older than Nazis. The Morgan David is even older than Hebrews. So it says as a symbol of unifying nature. So this is why on the image of ZP Moor, because of the unification of spirit, mind, and body, I've used what's called the Solomon's knot instead of Solomon's seal, which is the 6-point star. I use Solomon's knot, which is now because of where I live in England now and my background, my family, my adopted father and my mother's family were both mill workers. They came from the mills. And that's what you call the weft and the weft and the won't. That unification symbol that's on the ZP Moor character.
Okay.
So again, it's representing the tapestry of life, the weaving together of spirit, mind, and body.
Beautiful.
So you see, what happens is we must always remember this. They keep saying, now listen to this, they keep saying that your spirit was broken. Spirit cannot be broken. It's impossible. But what they can do is affect your mind so you disconnect from your spiritual self. And that's an important facet. So your physical and psychology, right? The psychology all the way through, it talks about the inner self, the feminine. It talks about your connectivity. So your psyche is a goddess in Greece. Yeah, they say it's derived from the Khmeran term su ki, meaning she soul. So all the way through, there's a connectivity within us all, and within humanity, that's carried by the woman, by the female. Now, what we have to understand is a simple thing. We're moving from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. We're moving from a time that when you're saying that the European world, the masculine, the patriarch, the misogynistic facet from the Greeks, they got hold of this knowledge and then were able to endorse themselves into this Piscean age. That age is done. It's moving now. And to understand it, we have to understand durations of 2,150 years at least. To understand that, to expand our consciousness out there. That's why on the timeline, the lineage timeline across the top, it shows all the ages. Yeah. So that we go, we start to understand, we're being taught to limit ourselves into what I call the corral. I don't use the term matrix because matrix means womb. So the film itself, when it says the matrix, even though I understand it and all the birth thing, I say, I love the film, I teach about the film, but no, I'm not going to disrespect the woman's womb by using that as a restricted thing. If you're pulling people through, that's why when Malcolm says to educate a man is to educate an individual, to educate a woman is to educate and liberate a nation. That's because from the womb, that's where we're supposed, that's our first classroom, our place of learning. That's why our first language is called mother tongue. That's why you have the basis there about our mathematics. When the sperm hit the egg, it went to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 5024. That's called binary cell division. The egg divides but multiplies in size. We're made up by mathematics. So we are taught to be restricted by the way we're trained to think from young. And then the older we get, they take us into our left brain. And it's a simple trick. That's what I call the corral. Another thing beyond that now, there's a thing called transhumanism, where they're trying to link us, human beings, into robotics, nanotechnology, so that we can be controlled even more, because these people's time is done. Piscean time is done. We're moving into Aquarian age, but they don't want to let it go. They don't want to go with the flow. They want to dam the flow of humanity and keep us into a Piscean state of being, which is masculine led. They want to stop that instead of letting it flow through. So those of you who are listening to this, your contribution but to that damming effect is by getting all the things like ZP Moore, by getting hold of Swati Pete and start racism, without going into the origins of that thing and the benefit from knowing this Moorish information, and then showing the biggest mess we made was involving ourselves in the oppression and slaving of Europeans. Because the Moors were slaving as high as Iceland, down into Ireland, down into France, into Portugal, and into Spain. They were slaving Europeans and put them into the North African trade. And then what happened was Prince Henry the Navigator, he wants to hit back on that. And what does he do? Send his people around the coastline of Africa. And then eventually starts taking slaves to Mauritania, starts going down to Senegambia, starts going into the sugar slave cycle on the islands of the African coast. Then you have the so-called discovery of the Americas, and then they pick up in that. Some of the things that we talk about, the terrible things that were done by the enslavement by Europeans. They were doing the Moors, the Arabs, later the Turks, did to the Europeans first. But they don't want to talk about that. So what did they do? Who got the kickback? West Africa got the kickback, and the whole enslavement process going down the coast, etc., from Senegambia down as far as Angola. But all the time that was going on, the 400 years across the Arabs were slaving us, and later the Turks across the Sahara. This is something we need to get into. We need to understand, and then we need to get into this. And ZP Moor, to me, is a key to underline. Ogun makes keys. We transform, we open doors, and then we let the understanding flow through. So don't take the position of victim. You sometimes have to know your position as perpetrator too.
Let us translate, and then we go to the last session because it's already 9:45. We go to the Blanco Pit, and you spoke about the icon a little bit. Let's see what we can translate for the people who are listening. Benji, we vroegen aan hem, hoe zit het met de icoon? Hè? Wat is dat, zeg maar, dat Zwarte Piet een icoon is voor ons. En hij vertelde net dat toen hij tijdens een presentatie kwam hij in het Palestijnen, Zwarte Palestijnen. Zo.
Ja, precies.
En hij had een ster op zijn...
David, die
Davidster. En ze luisterden naar hem, maar ze reageerden ook een beetje offensive. En na die presentatie vroegen ze eigenlijk waarom hij dat droeg. En toen vertelde hij dat het te maken had met, met Asian knowledge. En dat
met, wat zei die? De connectie tussen spirit en body of zo, ja.
Toch? Spirit, body en soul. Dat is de connectie. Dus weer een voorbeeld waarbij, zeg maar, door wat je hebt geleerd, of door hoe je bent geconditioneerd, dat je reageert.
Want hij legde ook uit dat het een teken was dat veel ouder was dan de Hebreeën. En je kan dit ook zien van als je kijkt naar bijvoorbeeld swastika, weet je wel, die door de nazi's gebruikt is. Het is niet een teken dat pas in de jaren 30 van de vorige eeuw. Het is een ancient, oud symbool wat al heel lang gebruikt wordt. Weet je, maar het heeft nu die connotatie gekregen, omdat dat hier zo neergezet wordt.
En dan worden gelimiteerd tot die geschiedenis. En weer haalt hij aan. En weer haalt hij aan om terug te gaan naar de geschiedenis. En naar te kijken. Want hij haalt ook aan dat we nu in de Age of Aquarius zijn. We hebben het natuurlijk in de andere conversaties ook over gehad. Ook met Don. Dat we nu in Aquarius tijdperk zitten. Nee, we komen uit vis en we zitten nu in Aquarius. Dat is die transformatie.
We gaan daar nu in, ja.
Ja, we gaan nu in die
Aquarius.
En we komen uit vissen. En vissen is zeg maar het dominante is
het brachiale systeem.
Juist. En
onvriendelijk.
Want dit vond ik ook een hele mooie wat Paul zei. Door de situatie waar we nu in zitten met die pandemic, sommige mensen zeggen pandemic, krijg je eigenlijk dat je weer wordt geconditioneerd. En met de nanobots is om de Pisces, die tijdperk van de vissen, zo ver mogelijk te redden. Want eigenlijk is dat voorbij. En hij voegt er ook nog aan toe, door je zeg maar te committeren alleen maar met protesteren van Zwarte Piet, dan draag je daar ook nog eens aan bij. In plaats dat je bijdraagt aan het positieve en het leren van de geschiedenis, zodat je dat weer kan overdragen aan de
volgende generatie. Ja.
Ik denk dat we het zo een beetje gecoverd hebben, toch? Van we hebben de kern een beetje uitgehaald. Oké, Paul. We translated the most important part you were trying to, or what you are.
I heard you say pandemic and everything, and let me just say this to you: that as you'll find that people are going to turn around and say, coronavirus doesn't exist. It does.
It does.
COVID-19 exists. Yes, it does. The only thing I'm really, really worried about is cortisol.
Cortisol?
Because cortisol is a stress hormone.
Yeah.
And what happens is that cortisol is what gets released through fear and stress. And what happens is consciousness towards your oppression. It means that every time you go and you go and visit these 12 years a slave and you keep reading up on enslavement and whatever, you'll be releasing cortisol into your system again. And I am very much about objectifying things, matter of fact elements about those dynamics. Because unless you get to grips with them like that, it means that you're going to be getting this trauma visiting all the time. It's re-traumatization. So for instance, many Dutch people, they'll be getting ready this time of year for being re-traumatized with Zwarte Piet.
Exactly.
Instead of getting ready to being reminded of, that difficulty, but no, of your large contribution to Dutch society. And why possibly these resentful white folk, some of them who resent the Black presence, they'll delight in ridiculing and trying to upset you, so that you'll keep repeating that. So you'll spend 11 months of the year rebuilding yourself up. Bang, it comes again. Oh, Zwarte Piet's racist, whatever. Yeah. For those who have it's become business fighting that oppression, you really need to check out what you're about, because that is like a worse form of pimping that I can imagine. Yeah. But that's just another way of looking at some things. Mm. But what I'm saying to you is that once you get this idea of there's been a tsunami of cortisol going right across the world, fear-based teaching, day in, day out, week in, week out. Yeah. And then that will connect to, because at first, I remember when the first thing came out and this thing came out, oh, Black people can't get coronavirus because of melanin. Mm-hmm. And then the next minute, oh, Black people get coronavirus more than anybody else. Let me tell you this. Black folks suffer more because of the stress caused by racism than anybody else. Yeah. So why should coronavirus be any different, or COVID-19, than any other disease? Mm-hmm. But then please check out your numbers, because I know, I'm blessed to know a sister used to be in the police force in the UK, and she told me on average every year, we got 64 million people, 67 million people in the country, right? Every year they record 600,000 deaths from everything. 600,000 deaths. So now, I think it was about 3 years ago, there were 38,000 deaths from flu, in the flu season. But they never told us that. It wasn't pictured every day in the news. It wasn't told that this is a dangerous, da-da-da-da-da-da. Could you imagine? Those are from West Africa, way before Ebola. For Ebola, this is a disease. You have to have a test to see if you got it. Hmm. How can it be that bad if you have to be tested to see if you have it? So all I'm trying to say is get rational, but don't get all kind of like, suspicious of this, that, and the other, and be all right. We got to be aware of coronavirus. We got to be aware of this, but you ain't aware of the effects of racism and the cortisol and stress that's put on you, so that you're going to be more prone to disease than anybody else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, true that. So get it into that dynamic as well, that you need to be looking at your health, your healing, right across the board. Right across the board. Start to think to yourself, well, how many people are dying of heart disease? Mm-hmm. How many people are dying of cancer? If we've got 600,000 deaths per year, and then they're focusing on, I think we're on 60,000 now through COVID-19, where's the other 540,000 coming from? Exactly. And why? And if heart disease is a bigger killer, why are we not looking at that? Yeah, true that. Yeah. So there's all this, please, consciousness, be consistent with everything. Be as level as you can. Mm-hmm. Because I follow the rules. I will follow the rules about what's being said, guidelines, whatever. I check out whether my temperature, my whatever. I would hate to think I was spreading anything to anybody else.
That's what it is, yeah.
But watch this now. Think about it. You can go 1.5 meters in the Netherlands, get on a plane, and it goes to 2 meters in the UK. Why is that? Because coronavirus knows the difference between 50 centimeters. It knows to switch off at 10 o'clock at night because it needs its sleep. You know, so we've got to shut this down. Come on now, this game's being played.
Exactly.
This game's been played way beyond. So what I'm trying to put to you is the way you look at things. Please get into this thing. If you're being warned about coronavirus and the effects it's having on you, think about the effects on Schwarty Peter and the effects it's having on you. How do you turn it into something good and that benefits you? Mm-hmm. Transmute the energy. Be aware of it. Don't take it on. It's to me, it's like there's Schwarty Pete. These people are doing this thing, and then it's like saying over there, if you go over there, you're going to catch a disease, but you catch it every year.
Yeah.
Catch it every year, early December or end of November.
Yeah.
Please do something about it. Do something about it. Transmute it.
Yeah, we're hearing you. Owe, that's the brother from. He also was in another life, and he's saying powerful info. Nanotechnology is om de mens te besturen. And he also said, you're doing a great job breaking it down with saying the consciousness towards oppression is the same when you're thinking about pandemic, like everything is bad, or just look at it how it is. And, you know, he's saying that,
your immune system,
mm-hmm.
your immunity. So when that person comes, watch this. Go and check out if you say something to Jewish people, check the response. Say something about Chinese people, check the response. They've got a totally different thing because they immerse in their culture.
Immerse in
their culture.
Immerse in the culture. That's the.
I'm sick and tired of people. I hear people dissing Jewish people, whatever, because they're defending themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They should.
So what you're supposed to do is look at that. Don't get me wrong. It means that what I'm trying to say to you, pull up your defenses, get your defense there, get your knowledge, get all of those things. But also you have to appreciate when you've been a perpetrator too, is what I'm saying. Check this now. There's a show coming on. There's a show coming on the TV. I saw it advertised last night. It'd be on BBC next week, I think it is. And it's this guy, I've got his name slips me. He played this guy, they call him the pub landlord. And he plays this British bulldog kind of character and whatever. And he's doing a show, Why People Hate England. That's what it's something like that, Why People Hate England. This guy is brilliant. He does in his shows when he does a pub landlord, you can shout out the name of a country and he'll tell you how Britain has had them over at some point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Britain's been involved in it. In fact, there's only 22 countries in the world that Britain hasn't invaded.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we get that kind of knowledge.
You need to talk about Blanco Pete quick.
Blanco Pete, because we
only have like 10 minutes.
Yeah, we only have 10
well,
minutes.
I may because of my I'm extremely immature and very childish, as my son will tell you. And what happens is when someone talk about Schwarty Pete, I go like into a mathematical balance. So I was saying, is there Blanco Pete? So if it's Schwarty Pete, is it Blanco Pete? And I said, well, what would Blanco Pete be? It will, number one, it wouldn't be P-I-E-T, it'd be P-E-A-T, as in peat, as in the peat bogs that are there in the Netherlands. So basically, what would he look like, Blanco Pete? Blanco Pete would be a white dude, or he'd be dressed in rags, covered in dirt. He would be carrying his peat cutting tool, the one that they make the turf with.
Turf, yeah.
Yeah, so he'd be carrying that and other things, and he'd be just covered in dirt, basically head to foot, in rags. And it's like, and basically, that's what basically the Netherlands would be if it wasn't for the kind of technology, irrigation, the infrastructure that was brought in from abroad. So that's what I talk about Blanco Pete.
So Blanco Pete is like
Well, can you imagine black people whiting up? Black people in whiteface. If you want to get an idea of it, there's a film called Watermelon Man.
Mm-hmm.
The Watermelon, Godfrey Cambridge. This is about 1970. And basically, it's about a racist. So Godfrey Cambridge is a black actor, and they have him whited up, a bit like Eddie Murphy does.
Mm-hmm. I saw that.
And so they're having whited up. And then he's carrying on about black people being this, that, that. And then he goes to bed one night, and then he wakes up in the morning and he's black.
Mm.
It's an old film, old comedy called The Watermelon Man.
Mm.
So if you look at Godfrey Cambridge in the beginning of that, imagine black folk whiting up, walking around, and well, let's see, what do white people get drunk? Do white people commit robbery and rape? Are some white people lazy? So watch this. Every single stereotype that they lay down on black people, you could put it on Blanco Pete and laying down saying, well, all white people's like that.
Yeah.
Now, I did this as an exercise one time. This is years ago now, in an intermediary treatment center. These are guys who were down in trouble for crime and whatever. But this is in Stoke-on-Trent, around about 1984. And I did this session with them, with about 20 of these guys. And they were going on about, niggers, and they're going on about Pakis, and going on about all different racial groups and different people. And so what I did, when they were coming out with these things, so I wrote it up on a board, and I wrote blacks, Africans, Asians, Chinese, gypsies, gays, and you see these guys download, they loved it. All the names they had for all the different people, and then the stereotypes with them, gypsies were thieves, and Irish were drunkards, and Scottish were tight, and Jews are this, and blacks are that, and the blacks were rapists, and blah, blah, blah. And so I wrote it all up. The one that they didn't have any names for were white people. So I helped them out with that. and then what happened was, I said, okay, there's two ways of knowing people. One way is just where you say hi to them on the street, or you've seen them about. The other way is knowing them, as in you really know them day to day and whatever. And they said, right. I said, I'm talking the second way of knowing. Do you know anybody who's lazy? Yeah. Do you know anybody who's committed theft? Yeah. Do you know anybody who's ever raped anybody? Oh, yeah. Do you know anybody who's just violent? And also, yeah. Do you know anybody who's gone fraud? Yeah. Do you know any? So in the group, so that I wrote, white people are lazy, violent, rapists, fraudster, thieves, whatever. And you should have seen all these white kids in the room. They went, no, you can't say that. And I said, why not? It's a stereotype. And I said, well, what about all this? And they all went, oh, shit. But they've been loaded with that information, that negative information, for years, from when they were born, and people talking around them and whatever. So you see, that's why I put these things. I have no fear of going into the elements of race. I'm talking down to earth. You want me to get technical and, all the theoretical stuff and whatever, I can go to that as well. However, I'm talking about day-to-day sayings, experiences, and everything that's people's carrying around in their heads. And watch this, because of political correctness now, you can't speak it. And it's building a frustration. They can't be honest. In fact, the schizophrenia now in the UK, mass mental schizophrenia. Why? Because they have a language code they use at home in private, and another language code they use in work. Because if they use a language code from home in work, they get the sack.
Wow.
Hey, Paul, I want to thank you for your time and all what you say. I think zullen we nog een laatste vertaling doen. We are running a little bit out of time, but we can do a last translation. Eigenlijk zegt Paul dat Blanco Pete is a Pete is, help me even, is...
Het tegenovergestelde van wat de Piet noemen.
De Piet is P-E-E-T.
Ja, het is dus meer omdat je dan te maken hebt met
Hoe heet het
maar hoe Nederland eigenlijk was. Dus dat mensen eigenlijk turfstekers waren.
Dat is het wel.
En dat we dus eigenlijk in een moeras woonden. Wat eigenlijk al tijdens de Romeinse bezetting door Tacitus. Die zei dus van, hij kon me niet begrijpen waarom mensen hier woonden. Want ze woonden ergens, je kon niet zien of het zee was of land. En ze hadden dan wat ze dan hoe heet die dingen weer? Een soort van heuvel gebouwd, terpen. En op die terpen, als de zee echt hoog stond, gingen ze op die terpen zitten met hun dieren. Weet je, dus hij vond dat zo belachelijk. Weet je, en daarom...
Eigenlijk refereert Paul met zijn verhaal van Blanco Piet naar het gedeelte van de turf. Dat er hier tijden was dat de turf werd gebrand. Hè? Dan was er nog geen andere brandstof. Ja. En dan gingen mensen ook echt in het moeras naar turf zoeken. En vandaar dus ook dat ze dan vies eruit zien.
Onder de modder zaten.
Ja, onder de modder zaten. En ook zeg maar gebroken kleren of zo. In ieder geval heeft hij een schets gemaakt van hoe je nog meer iets terug kan doen. In plaats van in de defense ook nog iets kan bedenken als een aanval. Of in ieder geval
als het tegenovergestelde.
Als het tegenovergestelde, ja, dat is een beter woord.
En belangrijk is gewoon dat we weten wij moeten weten dat er een alternatief is van het verhaal dat wij de hele tijd horen.
Heel belangrijk.
Want dat is wat er aan de hand is. Wij krijgen een stuk van de taart opgediend, terwijl het zo'n stukje is, maar die taart is rond. Yes. Dat andere stuk krijgen we niet. En daar moeten wij naar op zoek als wij ons willen helen. Hè, dat we van dat trauma eigenlijk, wat dit feest nu geworden is, dat we uit het trauma gaan en dat we daar onszelf zeg maar kunnen verbeteren. En dat we ook, als we dit dus zien, als we dat Zwarte Piet gebeuren zien, dat wij denken aan de kracht, de pracht, de ontwikkeling. Ik bedoel, van jullie willen gek doen, toch? Doe je ding.
Juist.
Wij weten wat dit is.
Juist.
Wij weten wat die Mooren hebben bijgedragen.
Ja.
Daar gaat het om.
Juist.
Dat moeten we onze kinderen leren.
Ja. Wat hij natuurlijk ook zegt, is dat je wel eerlijk moet zijn. Een verhaal heeft twee kanten. En dat je ook je hand in eigen boezem moet steken. Dat je ook moet kijken naar dat wat minder is gegaan. En wat, weet je, wat ook een gevolg heeft. En wat is oorzaak en gevolg. Dus naar dat verhaal moeten we ook kijken.
Zeker.
Paul, I want to thank you again for joining us, for doing this talk. It was a really, really, really good talk. Very interesting. You're doing also 3 seminars about Setpi Moor, the stereotyping, the flow of ancient knowledge, and Setpi Moor as a stratagem stratagem. I don't know. Yeah. I want to say thank you to Sisa Benji for joining us also. We missed Brother Don, but I think he got occupied. So next time. Is there something else you want to close this talk with?
Oh, you know something? My thing is always, there's an old tenant saying from Arabian saying, some people think it's Islamic, apparently it's not. It's an Arabian saying. It says, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, even unto the ends of the earth. And if we can do that with good intentions, you know, not to be know-alls or try to be overbearing, whatever. But if we can do that to find a better way to live our life and just be simple with it, I think that's the key to that. I know that's what I'm going for. I know I'm building my businesses back up and I want to generate wealth. And that's going to be more so I can look out for my children, I can look out for my grandchildren, but then it's also so that I want to be able to help people who need help, genuinely need help, who can make a better day for different people. So just always, you know, there's an old boxing adage, it says defend yourself at all times. Yeah, but I say while you defend yourself at all times, please make sure you know about your offense, your defense. You got to know who you're fighting as well, and just be clear. And lastly, I always say that we've got to be consistent. Mm-hmm. So if you don't like what someone's done or doing, please don't do it yourself. Yeah. And then the other one is that dehumanization requires rehumanization. And if you're looking to the people who's dehumanized you as being the measure for being rehumanized, I'm afraid we're going to be in trouble. So as Dr. Naim Akbar said, Dr. Naim, he said that our sense of freedom operates from the nature of our oppression. Mm. So sometimes we think that to be free is to act like the people who've perpetrated the things against you. Mm. Yeah. Dr. James Small, Professor Small says, how can you claim that you want to be free when the one thing you'll be when you're free is the one thing you don't want to be, which is an African. Right. African is more than just your physical appearance and whatever. It's an intrinsic value that tells you you're the mothers and fathers of humanity. And as that, you should be acting with that level of responsibility as well. In this phase we're actually in now, in this small space and time. So please remember, that's all it is. A little space and time that we're in. Someone's